Lessons in mateship as Australia lurches from one crisis to another. Sunshine Coast, Australia. For 1 minute on Saturday, millions of people in two countries were united by silence. Australians and New Zealanders paused at dawn on April 25 to commemorate the lives lost during war. For the neighboring nations, Anzac Day is a day of remembrance to mark the first major military mission for the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, the Anzacs, who faced fierce resistance from Ottoman fighters after landing on the Gallipoli peninsula in Turkey in 1915. It's a battlefield known for igniting the Anzac spirit and a legacy of mateship into the DNA of both countries. Mateship, an egalitarian concept, is characterized by ingenuity, honesty, humor, courage and compassion. It calls on communities to come together during hardship, adapt to challenging circumstances, and provide a fair go for all. For 15-year-old Australian Patrick Stibbard, mateship means looking out for one another. On Saturday, like millions of other Australians and New Zealanders, he stood on his driveway to pay his respects to the Anzacs. Traditional dawn services were cancelled this year due to the coronavirus lockdown. Instead, musicians were encouraged to play the bugle call, the last post, at home, while their neighbors lit candles and marked a minute of silence. It was the first time Stibbard had played the last post, adding to the echo of trumpets, snare drums, bagpipes, and a couple of barking dogs that broke the silence of the Sunshine Coast suburbia early Saturday. The inspiration behind the brass notes, his granddad, who served in the Vietnam War, stood beaming with pride at the end of the driveway. "We can all live the way we do because he fought for us," Patrick said. "It made me feel really special to have him standing there." For many Australians, the 60 seconds of silence felt all the more poignant this year. It was a tribute not only to those who served and sacrificed on battlefields abroad, but also the frontline heroes fighting COVID-19 right now at home. Consecutive crises. Coronavirus is not the only crisis Australia has confronted this year. For 240 days over the summer, the country burned. 33 people and over 1 billion animals died, 18 million hectares of land were scorched, and thousands of houses were destroyed. At first, it felt like an assassination of the Australian identity. The paradise of sunshine and sand was replaced by blood-red skies, choking smoke, and waves that tumbled soot. Australia's summer of bushfires was expected to define the beginning of a new decade. Yet, before flowers had time to sprout through the ashes, the nation was already grappling with a new crisis, the global coronavirus pandemic. Firefighters passed the baton to healthcare workers in what will be remembered as the year of the frontline worker. Australian artist Mick Ashley paid homage to the frontline heroes of 2020 in an artwork titled "The Road Ahead" that was widely shared on social media. Mateship in times of crisis is found in humanity. In Aussie terms, it's a call to arms, Ashley said. "I created an image to thank the amazing efforts of frontline workers. Social escalation from those in uniform to ordinary Aussies. Mateship is understanding that even the smallest acts of kindness can make a huge difference," according to Aaron Boutros, the co-founder of volunteer group Empty Esky. Formed during the fires, Empty Esky encourages Australians to support fire-affected towns by visiting them with empty eskis, otherwise known as coolers, and filling them up with local products to support local businesses. Travel is now banned under coronavirus rules, so the group is now encouraging Aussies to practice social escalation by filling their virtual eskis with online purchases. "We are extremely concerned about the businesses who have been double whammied," Boutros said. Summer foot traffic and Easter trade is what carries many of these businesses through the year. Engaging with regional small businesses makes a huge impact on morale and helps many business owners feel hope for the future again. Restaurateurs Susan and Kevin Plath were 2 days from reopening their fire-impacted The Chicken Shop in the popular holiday town of Bright, Victoria, when non-essential businesses were forced to close to stop the spread of the coronavirus. "Mateship saved our business from bankruptcy," Susan Plath said. "Without Empty Esky, we wouldn't have been able to pay our bills and put food on the table. It's that simple." Empty Esky challenged its followers to buy 100 bottles of the Plath family's Alpine sauce. To date, they've bought over 7,000. It's not only the financial assistance that people all around our country helped us with. The supportive messages really did help us a lot from a mental health perspective, Plath said. "You okay, mate?" The 2 consecutive crises has placed pressure on mental health. "It is okay if you are not feeling or doing well. It is normal to be upset by situations right now," said Professor Nicholas Proctor, chair of mental health at the University of South Australia. While we try to work things out by ourselves and may think we are getting the help that we need, sometimes we don't have all the bandwidth. A sense of community is a vital way of getting help, reassurance and connection. It means we are not on our own. Amid the coronavirus and in wake of the bushfires, Proctor and his team partnered with the mental health charity Are You OK? To revamp its Mateship manual, a practical guide to supporting people who are doing it tough. The number one rule of Mateship is to be a great listener, giving the person space and time to feel safe and talk about what's troubling them, Proctor said. For those wanting to practice Mateship while in lockdown, his message was clear: physical distancing does not mean social isolation. Our rural mates checking in on our rural and regional mates is more crucial than ever right now, with the consecutive crises seemingly cutting the thread that many were only just hanging on to. Crises like the bushfires and COVID-19 put a further strain on communities that, although vibrant and rich in spirit, are often doing it tough, said Chloe Harpley, a 22-year-old law and art student from Wagga Wagga. The flames may be out, but the disaster is far from over. Harpley founded Books for the Bush, which works to provide school supplies for students who were displaced and impacted by the fires. The initiative is now expanding to support kids studying at home under lockdown in remote areas. Mateship is all about putting yourself in the shoes of others, empathizing with them, and being there in solidarity. Knowing that complete strangers have you at the forefront of their minds is both life-changing and life-saving, Harpley said. The long-haul Mateship is Australia at its best. From claims of a lack of leadership during the fire to panic buying and fights over toilet paper, Australians' behaviour at times has been far from perfect amid the consecutive crises. However, MTSK co-founder Aaron Boutros said that in times of crisis, it is essential to look for opportunities to make life a little better for people who are hurting. When we unite and carry the problem together, it restores hope and gives us the motivation to keep going even when it's tough, she said. Proctor said that while the fires are out and the number of COVID-19 cases is falling, there's a still long way to go before communities recover from what has so far been a tough year. Mateship is not just for today. If we keep supporting and being positive over the longer term, we can figure this out together, Proctor said. Animal rescuer Marcus Fillinger carries a burned kangaroo on February 4 in Peakview, Australia. Fillinger tranquilized the wounded animal for transport to a recovery centre. A bushfire burns near the town of Bumblong, south of Canberra on February 2. Horses panic as a fire burns near Canberra, Australia, on Saturday, February 1. A firefighter coats a bridge with foam as a bushfire burns near Maria, Australia, on Saturday, January 25. In this long-exposure photo, a car's taillight streak had left as a wildfire glows at dusk near Clear Range, Australia, on Friday, January 31. An airplane dumps fire retardant behind houses at the foot of Mount Tennant as fire creeps through the Namadgi National Park in Canberra on Thursday, January 30. People embrace near the scene of a water tanker plane crash in Cooma, Australia, on Thursday, January 23. 3 American crew members died in the crash. Flying embers are seen in this long-exposure photo from Maria on Thursday, January 23. A young koala named Jeremy receives medical attention for burns at the Hillsville Sanctuary in Badger Creek, Australia, on January 23. Firefighters battle the Morton fire as it burns a home near Bundanoon, Australia, on January 23. The Parliament House in Canberra is blanketed by bushfire smoke on January 23. A firefighter battles the Morton fire as it consumes a home near Bundanoon on January 23. Veterinarian Ludo Valenza holds 2 grey-headed flying foxes, which were being treated for bushfire injuries at the Australia Zoo Wildlife Hospital in Beerwah, Australia, on Wednesday, January 15. Lieutenant Kynan Lang from the 10th 27th Battalion visits the scene where his uncle and cousin died in a bushfire on Australia's Kangaroo Island. A smoky haze from bushfires hovers over the Melbourne skyline ahead of the Australian Open tennis tournament on Tuesday, January 14. Poor air quality disrupted the qualifying rounds of the tournament. Properties damaged and destroyed by fire are seen in Narragunda, Australia, on Monday, January 13. Debris remains where houses stood in the Australian village of Wingalo on January 13. Bonnie Morris and sister Remy Morris look on as their family and firefighters battle bushfires at the edge of their family farm in Karata on Saturday, January 11. Pictures of firefighters are projected onto the Sydney Opera House on January 11. A vehicle makes its way through thick fog mixed with bushfire smoke in the ruined castle area of the Blue Mountains on January 11. Protesters marched through downtown Melbourne on Friday, January 10, in response to the ongoing bushfire crisis. An aerial view shows a track running through trees that were scorched by bushfires in East Gippsland, Australia, on Thursday, January 9. A pile of wood chips burns at a timber mill in Eaton, Australia, on January 9. Lisa Polson tends to her Clydesdale horse, Jake, on January 9. Jake suffered burn injuries in a bushfire on December 31. A small wave of black water full of burned debris breaks at a beach at Eden on January 9. A dead kangaroo lies on a burnt farm in Batlow. A firefighter backs away from flames after lighting a controlled burn near Tomarong on January 8. Stebhini Bailey is embraced on Wednesday, January 8, as she describes the impact the bushfires have had on her farm in Batlow. Charlotte O'Dwyer, the young daughter of rural fire service volunteer Andrew O'Dwyer, wears her father's helmet during his funeral after being presented with a service medal in his honor by RFS Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons on Tuesday, January 7, in Sydney. A resident throws a bucket of water onto a smouldering tree on his property on Monday, January 6, in Wingalo, Australia. A military helicopter flies above a burning woodchip mill in Eden, New South Wales, on January 6. A Royal Australian Navy MH-60R Seahawk Romeo helicopter refuels on board HMAS Adelaide during Operation Bushfire Assist on Sunday, January 5, in this image provided by the Australian Department of Defence. HMAS Adelaide and Army Reserve Forces have been assisting with bushfire evacuations on the southern coast of New South Wales. Families are evacuated by air from Malakuta on January 5. A man walks past ash from bushfires washed up on a beach in Merimbula on January 5. The flight deck of a C-130J Hercules is lit by the red glow of the fires below as the aircrew attempts to land in Merimbula to drop off fire and rescue crews to assist fighting the bushfires on January 5. This satellite image provided by NASA on Saturday, January 4, shows smoke from fires burning in Victoria and New South Wales. A father holds his daughter as the skies above turn red during the day on January 4 in Malakuta, Australia. Many parents with young children were stuck in Malakuta after flights were grounded because of smoke, and only school-aged children and older were allowed to evacuate by boat. A Royal Australian Navy crew unload luggage as evacuees from Malakuta arrive aboard the MV Sycamore on January 4 at the port of Hastings, Australia. Smoke from wildfires shrouds a road near Maria, Australia, on January 4. Nancy Allen stands outside her house as high winds push smoke and ash from the Curwen fire toward Nora in New South Wales on January 4. Evacuees board the Royal Australian Navy's MV Sycamore on January 3 in Malakuta, Victoria, Australia. Navy ships plucked hundreds of people from beaches, and tens of thousands were urged to flee before hot weather and strong winds in the forecast worsen Australia's already devastating wildfires. Massive smoke rises from wildfires burning in East Gippsland, Victoria on January 2. Royal Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons presents a posthumous commendation for bravery in service on January 2 to the son of RFS volunteer Geoffrey Keaton, who was killed battling bushfires at Keaton's funeral in Buxton, New South Wales. Boats are pulled ashore as smoke and wildfires rage on January 2 behind Lake Conjola. Cars line up as people evacuate the town of Batemans Bay in New South Wales on January 2. A satellite image released by Copernicus Sentinel dated December 31 shows bushfires burning across Australia. A kangaroo rushes past a burning house in Lake Conjola, Australia, on December 31. A man tries to defend a property in Lake Conjola on December 31. Firefighters hose down trees as they battle against bushfires around the town of Nora, in the Australian state of New South Wales, on December 31, 2019. Thousands of holidaymakers and locals were forced to flee to beaches in fire-ravaged southeast Australia on December 31 as blazes ripped through popular tourist areas, leaving no escape by land. A destroyed home in Sarsfield, East Gippsland, Victoria, on December 31. Children evacuated from areas affected by bushfires play at the showgrounds in the southern New South Wales town of Bega on December 31. A sky crane drops water on a bushfire burning near houses in Bindura, Melbourne, on Monday, December 30. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, captured this satellite image of the historic bushfires burning across Australia on December 26. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison is briefed by fire officials at New South Wales Rural Fire Service Control Room in Sydney on December 22. Morrison arrived back in Sydney amid criticism after taking a family holiday to Hawaii during the bushfire emergency. Tributes for volunteer firemen Andrew O'Dwyer and Jeffrey Keaton are seen at Horsley Park Rural Fire Brigade in Sydney, Australia, on December 22. It's believed they were killed when their vehicle hit a tree before rolling off the road, the New South Wales Rural Fire Service said in a statement. A firefighter battles the Gospers Mountain Fire in Bilpin, New South Wales, on Saturday, December 21. A charred bicycle lies on the ground in front of a house destroyed by bushfires on the outskirts of Bargo on December 21. Fire and rescue personnel monitor a bushfire as it burns near homes on the outskirts of Bilpin on Thursday, December 19. A property burns in Balmoral on December 19. A helicopter drops fire retardant to protect a property in Balmoral. Police dispersed demonstrators during a climate protest near Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison's official residence in Sydney on December 19 during his absence on an overseas holiday, as bushfires burned across the region. Children swing into the Penrith River during a heatwave in Sydney on December 19. A landscape of burnt trees is pictured after a bushfire at Mount Wyson, in the Blue Mountains, on Wednesday, December 18. A wallaby flees a fire burning near Mangrove Mountain, north of Sydney, on December 10. A smoke haze blankets Bondi Beach as the air quality index reaches higher than 10 times hazardous levels in some suburbs of Sydney on December 10. People join a guided climb of the Sydney Harbour Bridge as bushfire haze darkens the sky on December 6. People are seen wearing face masks to protect against the poor air quality in Sydney on December 5. A bushfire burns out of control in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales on December 2. An aerial view shows bushfires burning in the Richmond Valley on November 26. A CFA crew member rests after a day of maintaining controlled backburns in St Albans, Australia, on November 21. An injured koala receives treatment after its rescue from a bushfire at the Port Macquarie Koala Hospital on November 19. The hospital said the fires have decimated the area, which is a key habitat and breeding ground for the marsupials. More than 350 koalas are feared to have been killed by bushfires in NSW, according to animal experts. Firefighters try to protect the Colorado Heights Public School on November 19. Bushfire smoke clouds the sky over the Hawkesbury River in Brooklyn, Australia. Firefighters work on controlled backburns on November 14. This satellite image shows wildfire smoke on November 14. A man uses a wet towel to help put out flames near the town of Terry on November 14. Firefighters organized their crews prior to working on controlled backburns in Sydney on November 14. Warren Smith pats his dog after returning to find his house destroyed near Nana Glen on November 13. Teresa de Ryder left and Michelle Wilson embrace after returning to their homes near Nana Glen on November 13. Firefighters battle a spot fire in Hillville on November 13. Residents look on as thick smoke rises from bushfires near Nana Glen on November 12. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison looks at his screen as he gets a briefing on the bushfire situation on November 12. Locals watch the fires impact farmland near Nana Glen on November 12. A firefighter mops up after a bushfire in the Sydney suburb of Landilo on November 12. A fire and rescue team inspects damage around the village of Torrington on November 11. Andrew Mackenzie surveys the damage to the area around his home in Torrington. His home was spared, but his neighbor's house was burned to the ground. Smoke from the Gulf Road fire fills the air in Glen Innes on November 11. A sign on a Terry fire station warns of catastrophic fire conditions. A lone joey is pictured on a scorched patch of ground in Torrington on November 11. Emergency crews tend to animals on a property in Torrington on November 11. Burnt trees dot the landscape in Old Bar on November 10. A firefighter works to contain a bushfire near Terry on November 10. A helicopter drops water on a bushfire in Old Bar on November 9. This aerial photo, taken on November 9, shows bushfires in the northeastern part New South Wales. Fires burn in the distance as children play on a beach in Forster on November 9. A fire rages in Bourbon on November 9. The remains of a property are seen in Bourbon on November 9. A plane drops fire retardant on a bushfire in Harrington on November 8. Firefighters try to put out a bushfire in Woodford on November 8. Police knock on the door of a house to warn residents of an out-of-control bushfire near Clummer on November 8. A resident hoses smoldering logs as a bushfire burns in Woodford on November 8. The sun is seen through heavy smoke as a bushfire burns in Woodford. Firefighters hose down an area in Woodford. Forster residents watch as a water-bombing helicopter flies over a bushfire on November 7. In this handout photo from NASA's Aqua satellite, destructive bushfires are seen off the coast of New South Wales on November 7. Click subscribe to receive the latest news.